Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. I'm really glad you're here with me, and I got to tell you how excited I am about today's show. Today, I'm going to consider this a gratitude episode. I was speaking with my guest today about how appreciative I am for all of you guys supporting the show. To be back on stage again this last year, the last several months, has saved my life, and you guys are a big part of that. So thank you for supporting the show. Thank you for supporting us all out there on the road. And thank you to my sponsors for supporting me. I do not want to let them go unnoticed, but let me tell you before we start, if you're watching this on anything else other than YouTube, please do me a favor. Go to the link below. Go to youtube.com/allaccesslive with Kevin Rankin. Subscribe to the channel. There's a little bell down there to be notified whenever I have new episodes. So you can go back through and you can look at the archives of over 220 guests over the last year and a half. And then when we have new guests, like next week, I've got Heather Thomas from The Fall Guy, the iconic pinup model. I've got Vinny Appice coming up. I've got Dave Ellefson coming up. So many incredible guests, and none more incredible than today's guest. But before we get started with him, I want to thank my sponsors. My newest sponsor, Rhythm Traders, based in Oregon. And if you see this link below, rhythmtraders.com, they've been around for over 30 years. They've got the best amount of percussion and drum equipment in the entire state of Oregon. They have lessons, they've got repairs, and if you go in and you let them know that All Access Live with Kevin Rankin sent you, they're going to give you 10% off the already discounted prices. And if you order online, there's no sales tax. So you're saving a bunch of money and you're helping my show out by supporting them as well. Now, the other sponsor, I'm very grateful. They've been an in-kind sponsor for my show for nearly a year, or more than a year now, actually. 5 Star Guitars, based in Beaverton, Oregon. They've got a huge Black Friday sale going on this week. And so if you're looking for a guitar or repairs or lessons for the loved one in your life, go to 5starguitars.com/allaccesslive and enter this promo code below, allaccess15. Everything you see on those pages is already a greatly discounted price. And then if you enter the promo code, you'll get 15% off. And again, Oregon, so there's no sales tax. So you save so much money, and you're helping my good friends out. So thanks to 5 Star, thanks to Rhythm Traders, and thanks to you guys for subscribing. So if you didn't do it, go to youtube.com, All Access Live with Kevin Rankin. Subscribe, hit the bell. Now, let me tell you, we're talking gratitude, we're talking support, we're talking thanks. Just a few weeks ago, I met this gentleman for the first time, and I was told what a remarkable cat he was. And if you've ever run across somebody in your life for the first time and you knew within 15 seconds, wow, I resonate with this person so much. I totally click with them. I felt like I met a new brother. And so we spent some time in Cancun reminiscing about places we've been at the same time, people we knew, mutual people, total assholes that we've met in the business, and then really cool people too. And our appreciation for recovery, for mankind, our gratitude for people. And so I am so grateful to welcome my friend and incredible drummer, Steve Brown. Steve, what's happening, buddy?
What? Oh, I'm just kidding. I had to. I had to crack the ice right off the bat.
Damn it. Yeah. So anybody that watched the show yesterday, you know that there were some audio problems, and I spent the entire time texting my guest, John Nymann from YNT, and we had to do this almost sign language thing. But so Steve is there in the dark in Sacramento right now.
I was going to start writing into. I know somehow my little face lamp got a little better. Oh, hey,
that's great. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, do the magic. All right.
Yeah. Don't you have a lava lamp or something you can put in the background for ambiance?
Yeah. Well, I was, but then you said I was haloing. So.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, that wasn't a lava lamp. You have.
It was a lava lamp. It was the sun lava lamp.
Well, that's just the little baby Jesus shining down on your face.
That's right.
So, dude, okay, there's a ton. You and I could probably talk for about 6 or 7 hours at least just to start. So,
yes,
let's
we last ended our conversation like at the elevator at the hotel in Cancun, and we had already talked for an hour and seen the hotel doors open and close about 50 times, and people getting out and coming in, and you and I just kept going and going. We're like, we have to go to bed.
I know, yeah. Well, and then you said, hey, just let me drop something in my room really quick. And I go, yeah, cool. So I just popped into your room. I'm just going to say goodnight. And then, like a teenager, we just sat and talked for an hour again. But the thing is, man, our beloved friend Jason Jones had told me about what a remarkable guy you are, and I've certainly heard your name a bunch. I know I've met your brother a handful of times.
Right.
For people that don't know, you want to give a little background on who your brother is?
My brother is Wild Mick Brown.
Wild Mick Brown.
Yes, yeah. Wild Mick Brown, the drummer for Dokken, and the original drummer for Dokken. And I also did a stint with Ted Nugent for like 13 years. And also played with Ronnie Montrose right before I did also. So
I didn't realize there's the Montrose connection.
Right. So he's enjoying retirement, which is awesome for him. You hardly hear a musician that retires and that's still
true,
alive.
Well, that's because there is no 401k plan for this business, really.
Right.
And so
because he sold all of his drums, which is how you and I know Jason Jones.
That's
right. My brother's drums.
Yes, yeah. Jason is the local drummer for the Dokken tribute, and they're amazing dudes. And Jason was so excited about that trip. He went down. I don't know how that connection happened, but he went down. And
I don't either.
He met Mick at a storage unit, and he shows up at the trailer. And the next thing you know, every piece of equipment that Mick had ended up in Jason's possession. And,
yeah. I know, and I told him that crap was mine, man.
That was your inheritance
from me,
dude. You don't want to be carrying around a big old 28-inch kick drum, man. That's ridiculous,
No, it ended up in the perfect place in a Dokken tribute band. I mean, what better than that? So that's awesome. Yeah.
Wild Mick Brown. I'm glad you brought up the nickname, because as I dug in deeply into your background check, and I found the regards that George Lynch provided about you, because you've done some playing with George, and George said playing with you was such a refreshing experience. He said we like to refer him as Mild Mick Brown. So I don't know you to be that. But I thought he said I guess mild Steve. But right. I don't know you to be mild at all. I think that when I met you, you're so dynamic and wild. It's good energy.
My friends all thought that was the funniest thing ever, But as somebody said in an interview, George Lynch, Dr. Seuss. So he had to find something that rhymed with wild, so that was the next obvious thing.
I'm a huge George Lynch fan. I got to tell you, man, I really am. I think, you know how certain bands, they've got an iconic character that transcends like the band, image-wise, right? So you think about what George represented, the guitars for sure, the Mr. Scary guitars, and also the way he played. As you know, I mean, I played with Jennifer Batten a long time, and she loves Lynch's his flutter picking. That was like a big thing for him.
Well, I mean, Frank Hannon and I were talking about it a couple of weeks ago, and he was always saying you always know it's George Lynch, and it's one of those things that and you and I could a long list of drummers, I'm sure that have the same thing. You always know it's them. You always know when it's Vinny Appice. I always there it is. Totally. And it's just that thumbprint that's so cool that certain players just have that thing, and he's definitely one of them over time,
It's what I love is that you made a name and certainly a place for yourself, and growing up in the sort of shadow. And I've talked to a lot of musicians on this show about growing up in the shadow of a sibling or a parent. I had Dolly Parton's sister on the show, and we talked a lot.
Yes.
Stella was incredible.
You and I talked about that. Yeah.
That's right, man. And she was such a beautiful human being, and being able to showcase what a special person she was, having nothing to do with Dolly, right? Just knowing her character and her talent. Sometimes it's great and it really works, and sometimes it's a struggle for people that have to live in a shadow of somebody that's regarded as like sort of this iconic figure. And But
Right.
your bro was out there and he made a great name for himself, and he was like, a big figurehead in like the MTV Headbangers Ball days, and
Definitely.
and for me growing
Yeah.
up in Montana as a hard rock guy, I thought, to be that type of character who is,
Right.
contributing to a band, but also not for the notoriety or the recognition or heroism fanatic thing. It's more, to represent that character is really cool.
Right.
You did it without, I mean, of course, I'm sure, and you can talk a little bit about the transition growing up, as a
Absolutely.
little bro, but from what I've been able to tell, you've earned every single role that you've gotten in any bands. And so why don't you talk a little bit about watching your bro, how you grew up, and maybe some first opportunities for you to have gotten commercial gigs.
Well, first of all, thank you for bringing it up that way.
Sure.
And you, it's one thing, we have your brother, in bands or whatever, but then it's like another thing if he's your hero, both musically and older brother. I mean, he's 14 years older than I am, so there's definitely that idolization and things that go on naturally in households with older brothers and stuff. But then, when it gets to being a little bit older and, and the more successful that he would get at things, it was before Facebook and the internet, and you
Right.
could punch up YouTube and see the show. I was watching Tesla shows like in the bus from the stage, and it was already on YouTube, and
Oh
but
yeah.
we as a family really sat around, and it was like the movie That Thing You Do, when they see their kid on TV. And
Yeah.
we around and waited for American Bandstand to be on when he was on there, and it was like
Wow.
all these crazy things, because we lived in a rural town of at that time it was no more than 1,000 people. I think it was between 500 and 1,000. So it was a really trippy thing to see. But then when I started playing drums, the good thing was that, okay, it in the beginning it opened some doors for me in some ways, and in others, it was kind of a hindrance to me personally, because I saw this model of how things were that I thought that they were supposed to go.
Okay.
And it took me, I mean, decades before I figured out that, okay, just because my path didn't look exactly like his path, I didn't fail at it. I was actually pretty successful on my own without even bringing those things in, to
Yeah.
his name or that notoriety into the mix. And it took a really, really long time. I mean, I wouldn't say in the past 8 years, it's finally come to light in my own experiences and the way I've been able to come back and do new things, that it was that I learned how to accept it and go, wow, look at the things. He even said it to me one time. He was like, look at the things that we're able to do. Like,
Did
look at
he?
these
Okay.
experiences that we've had, and look at all that shit that we'd never be able to experience otherwise. And so
Totally.
that actually kind of registered with me, and then I went, wow, I did have some interesting things along the way, and just because it didn't look exactly like his doesn't mean I failed at it. It meant that I had a different path.
Sure.
He played in one band for, or, one or three or four bands, in his whole career. And, probably like I've done thousands of demos and
Totally.
played with other people's records and live, and think of all these artists that I've played, but and he's never had that experience,
Sure.
and that's an interesting thing. I do accept that and love that now, more than
Yeah,
anything.
man. People talk, in sports and in film and TV and that kind of thing about nepotism, and the music business too, right? So,
Right.
some people have been able to get great opportunities as a leg up, from a sibling or a parent or whatever that was leading the way before them. And it's funny that somebody might complain about, oh, so and so, got a better opportunity because their dad was that guy. What if uh, Ringo Starr, like Zach Starkey or one of those kind of things. Rick Nielsen's kid, right? When we were in Cancun, right? So Nielsen's kid now playing drums for Cheap Trick, but there's no way those guys would get those gigs if they didn't have the chops. And I think of the shows I've had on here, I would say at least half of them we've talked about. There are a million musicians out there, a million guys out there that have chops. But if you don't have the hang, you don't have the personality that can be to be able to work with somebody and be around each other 24 hours a day, then you're not going to keep a gig. If you're like a buddy, like if you're Buddy Rich, a notorious asshole, unless you're running your own band, you're not going to be in an ensemble, right? So,
there's guys that can get away with it. You and I just aren't one of them.
But honestly, but those guys, developing a reputation like that is not a legacy I want to leave, right? So,
that's true.
For me, camaraderie is so huge, right? And it shows in bands on stage. You can always tell if the vibe's not happening with a band. Just see. So if you go backstage or behind the venue, you see four tour buses show up with 4 different guys on each bus. You're like, all right, that's a paycheck.
You know the deal.
Yep, that's just that's their retirement plan. But when I saw you play, now I saw the very first, I guess the second show of this year's tour. Troy was playing the beginning of the tour. Saw him in Spirit Mountain, and then just 3 weeks ago, I got to see you play that gig in Cancun. And I will tell you, I loved Tesla so much. One of the first bands that changed my life. I think I told you I bought my ride cymbal because of Changes. Seeing Def Leppard show, Tesla opened up for them, and the Mechanical Resonance tour. It just I was 18. And I thought, okay, that's what I want to do. Watching you do that gig was such a trip because at first I was kind of bummed out that, Troy wasn't there. You kept Troy's spirit there. You honored the songs, you had all the fills, but it was completely your personality. You brought this energy that I would love to say you were like my twin in a lot of ways because you're smiling up there. I could tell this is what you're put on this planet
people
to
that
do,
have
bro.
seen you and me have told me the same thing. They're like, I mean, 2 months before I met you, a student's parents go see you in Rockland near me, and they go, man, does this guy ever remind us of you? And I was like, really?
There is no other me, right?
Yeah.
Well, that's a beautiful thing, right? Because it transcends to the audience.
And that's the reason, and that is one of the only reasons why I could be fortunate enough to have that gig is because, I've known the guys for a long time, and funny thing is Troy and I were the last ones out of all of the Tesla guys to hang out, but
really, okay,
but the part of my job at for whatever it is just to make sure that those guys are having fun and they're happy, and I'm like, okay, make sure the songs are cool and make sure the songs are solid, and the rest of it, like you said, it's 23 hours. Like, you got to get along with somebody for the rest of the time, and and it's a grind. We all know it's kind of a grind out there and stuff. So making it positive and making it fun for everyone. I like looking at the guys on stage and making funny faces and going like,
yeah,
come on,
God.
Where?
Right.
So, and they were kind of like,
wait, that's not rock and roll.
Great part of it. But imagine how cool it is. Just like you and I were talking about, that ride cymbal thing on Changes, and I'm up playing it, and there was 3 drummers. And I got to tell Troy this when one of the times in earlier months when we were talking on the phone every day leading up to this and everything, and I had told him, I said, there was 3 guys when I first started playing drums. Obviously, one was my brother.
Yeah.
2 was Frankie Banali.
And then
because,
Jason Jones.
the mental health and Jason Jones is number 3. All right, no. He did it. He did it, Jason. He did it. Oh, this guy over here. All right.
Okay, so Banali, yes, man.
No,
God, Frankie.
But then, and Troy was the 3rd. And
Yeah.
because, mental health came out, and that was all over the radio and everything. So I wanted to learn how to play that. But the next thing, what was a big thing with me was, and you had John Nymann on last night, was the Eric Martin band,
Right.
and that was kind of some of my musicals, and I got to tell Troy what that meant to me and how I kind of followed his playing along during that period, and then what a honor and a blessing it is to be playing these tunes, and how do you say no to that?
Well, okay, so how did it happen? Tell me about the connection and how you got the gig.
And I'm sure you've talked to a bunch of people out in Planet Music Land too, and some people over the course of the last 18 months that they weren't touring and stuff like that, they found a different purpose, or they found different things to do, or like I think in Troy's case, he was around his mom more, and he wanted to do those things, and there was things that interested him closer to home, and that's it. I mean, I can't.
But you've known each other for quite a while. I mean, you've been friends.
Yeah, so I mean, over the last 10 years or so, I've done stuff with the band with Tesla for like 15 years, like here and there, and they do a benefit, or Troy couldn't make it one day or something, and it was just to help out, really, and so it was kind of, I had forgotten how long all of us had been kind of friends, and that first show that I got to do with them, was just like, I was looking around on the bus and thinking, wow, this is kind of comfortable. Was it like a big, oh my God, like I freak out all the time, I don't care what it is, I'm going to play in front of 5 people and I'm like, Jesus, I better, do something about this.
Well, I mean, from what I can tell, you don't take a damn thing for granted, And
right. Well, I do, or I have, and I do, but I wanted to make sure, who knows? I knew at the beginning of this thing, at first it was going to be 2 weeks, and then it was like going to be the first run, and it was like Troy just goes, "Hey, I'm going to leave." I mean, and then for him to like leave his kit out on tour, and because it was just easier to do that for everyone, and I was like, okay.
I was going to ask you about that. So that's his kit that you were playing on.
Yeah,
right
yeah.
But with a different rack system, right?
It's the same rack system he had and everything. I configured it for myself, and I'm pretty simple. This is my thing. If you put toms and like tambourines and crap around, I'm gonna spend the whole show finding ways to hit them.
Okay.
Finding ways to use them. I don't need that distraction. Sure. Not going on up here. So
are you
so
ADD?
I kind of just like reconfigured. Yeah, no, maybe.
Okay,
wait, hold on. Look, a nickel. There's a nickel. Wait.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Were we doing something?
You are a musician. You get excited about a nickel, right? So.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, as it got further, for those first couple of weeks, I was like, how long is this could end at any given moment at all. So my whole thing of going in there was I told the guys, like, I'm going to have fun. If you don't want to have fun, I'm only going to be annoying to you. Right. That was rule number 1.
Okay.
And then, the other thing was to myself, make sure I find ways to take all of this in, every single last part of it. And because that's something that I sometimes trick myself into, not taking in all the surroundings because it's overwhelming. Mm-hmm. And I knew that this was going to be that case. So I'm like, this time I'm going to do something completely different with myself, and that was kind of the thing. I just, every minute of the day, I wanted to take in as much stuff as I could, And I took in a lot of that bus though.
So yes,
a lot of mapping.
Like, what do you do, man? Like, to be able to absorb it all? Like, what are you doing to take advantage of everything?
I think more of that deal with myself was revolving around shows. I one of my things with myself to make me not be so, because I'll get wrapped up in it. I'm still a 14-year-old kid who grew up next to the horses and in the woods, and going to an arena and playing with Leonard Skinner, or even the headlining shows and stuff with these guys. It's just like, that's a lot to process. So
Yeah.
sometimes I'll actually trick myself into going like, yeah, it'll be okay, and I'll like belittle it to myself so I don't freak out. But this time I was like, no, I'm going to look every single person in the face and, in the front row, and try to interact with the guys as much as I can, and really give it everything I got, and I did. I'm still sore.
John was talking about that last night. I don't know if you caught that part of his episode or the
Yes.
interview, but
When he talked about Dave?
When he talked about the Who putting him on the list, when he said,
Yes.
when he got a hold of their management and they said, just give me your name. And he shows up and he's on the guest list that night. And he said from that point forward, it meant so much to him that he wanted to honor people at shows by always hooking them up and guests,
And I laughed because I do not have the option to put a don't ask.
Here's something we talked about. Do you remember this? We talked about
yes.
about and things are different now too. I mean, I don't know about for you, but for me,
well, we're on lock. We're in the COVID bubble, so there's no guests, there's no backstage, there's nothing going on. We see ourselves and the crew, and the rest of the time there's nothing. So there's no one backstage, and which was actually a good thing for me in some ways, because I didn't have the distraction of needing to interact with people on top of trying to learn songs and going, oh my God, and all those things. So, it was kind of a good thing on this run. I missed, I missed interacting with people though, in a lot of ways, Well,
that's the cool thing about like Cancun, right? We do the show, and
that was awesome.
They were very, very cognizant of trying to make sure that people were safe with vaccinations.
Yes.
And so that was kind of a bubble in and of itself. You knew that for the most part,
I know,
and so
it was so great when it was just like you could see people's faces. People were walking around, and you got to talk to them. And I know you're probably the same, but when I'm talking to people, I have to constantly pull down my mask to go, I'm smiling, I'm laughing, because everything that's coming out of my mouth is some kind of sarcasm or something.
You can see the smile in your eyes, man. That I know that there are some lyrics, about that silliness.
Yeah, but I try to give them these.
Yeah. Well, your buddy Todd Boisvert here said, try not to smile when you bump into Super Steve. It's not possible. And I noticed it, man. Because I watched your show. Man, I mean, I bet I don't know if you're like me, but when I go see a band that I love so much, it's really frustrating to me that I'm so drawn to watch the drummer that I'm like, shit. I'm sitting there watching, I've known Eric Aldenius for a while. I'm watching the Billy Idol show and just watching Eric play drums. And I'm like, man, that's Billy freaking Idol and Steve Stevens. And what am I doing stuck?
Right.
But with your show too, the energy that you brought and the vibe was so positive. And I get comments from people about my own playing that way a lot. And they're like, you can totally tell that you love doing what you do. And, I talked to Huey Lewis about that years ago. We did an 80s cruise, and it was so funny. My wife at the time, she's been around musicians and she knows, like she's not at all sort of starstruck by anybody, and she was jabbing Huey. It was so funny after the show because Bill, their drummer, Bill Gibson, he smiled the whole time. In fact, the whole band was smiling, and Huey's up there doing his thing. Another Bay Area band, right? But she said,
exactly.
I said, Huey, man, I love the fact that, you guys are out here this many years later, you're still smiling, all of you. And he goes, well, I told the guys, man, if you're not feeling it that night, you just fake it. And my ex-wife goes, so you're pretty used to that, right? And he goes, what's that? She goes, people just faking it for you. And he's like, oh,
perfect.
Look at you, you know. But
well, yeah, I mean, you know, well, I don't know how you can play Huey Lewis songs and not have a smile on your face.
Yeah, like,
but, you know, yeah, like Mean Mugging Neighbors, like, you know.
But you've done heavy rock stuff, and I was in a metal band years ago. This band, Craig and Theo, and they were a band that had done a bunch of stuff on Columbia, and they had kind of a second life. And during that second life, I came in on drums and replaced the original drummer, and their manager was the singer's mom. And we're doing these heavy metal shows for like UFC events and all this, and you're playing with like, like those kinds of bands. And the mom said,
back, like,
yeah, she's like, there's no smiling in heavy metal. And I said, what heavy metal bands do you know that have a mom for a manager, right?
Yeah, there's no moms in heavy metal either.
Unless you consider like Sharon Osbourne to be Ozzy's.
All right,
but anyway, but
she wasn't always a mom.
That's true. Yeah,
well, I guess she's always been Ozzy's mom, hasn't she?
I think so. A lot of babysitting for that woman, but
yes.
Speaking of other like better halves in the business. One of your old bosses, I would say, his wonderful widow just friend requested me. So Lisa Montrose actually just reached out.
Yes.
Tell me about the Montrose connection, and please tell me, like, what's your background with Ronnie? And rest in peace, by the way, man. What a gem.
And Lisa's great, by the way. And you'll have to talk to her because, I mean, she's another one that'll just get all the good stuff out of it, But I came across it. I was playing with Dan McNay. Dan McNay and I, for those of you who don't know, he's the bass player for Jack Russell's Great White at the moment. And he and I like came through Sacramento and played in every band together. Like you could, if there was a band and he joined, they were going to lose their drummer. If there was a band and I joined, they were going to lose their bass player. So we could play together always.
Nice.
But he had started playing with Ronnie Montrose, and eventually my brother, they needed a drummer, and I forgot who was my brother. I want to say it's Jimmy DeGrasso or somebody like that. And then
he's a big guy too.
Yeah, correct. That's right. Ronnie loved playing with my brother, and he really dug the way the band sounded and everything with him. And my brother had to leave and go back to Ted Nugent. So I think during that time off, either my depending on who you ask, the story changes. But the reality is probably the only door that ever got open because of my brother that I got to take advantage of. And that was between Dan and Mick saying, hey man, Mick goes, why don't you call my brother? He lives, Ronnie lived in the Bay Area and I live in Sacramento. So it was pretty close and we could get together kind of whenever we wanted to. So anyway, we spent time on the phone and talked, and he was just saying, as soon as I started talking to him, he's like, yeah, you and Mick are brothers, all right, and my brothers, that was kind of a neat bonding experience that we had too, because we had never really had that experience of doing the same songs with a different and so I called him because I was like, well, I don't know how to approach this. There was he had so many kind of different drummers along the way that played everything differently. And all he said to me was, hey man, that Montrose album, the first album, the Great Eight, as he referred to it also, is he's like, that's an iconic album. You got to play those songs like they're meant to be played, and I think both he and I shared the experience of, we picked Denny Carmassi's parts that were like part of the song and made sure that those were intact. It's kind of like a guitar player doing a guitar solo, and there's a melody line in there that everyone knows,
right?
And then it's missing. So
if somebody's covering Crazy Train and they don't do Randy Rhoads like licks, doesn't work.
Yes, you can't go out and play Eruption over Crazy Train. I mean, it just doesn't work. Right. So I think that was a big part of it, and I think my brother and I's simplicity and stuff, for better or for worse, was attractive to Ronnie. Plus, again, we'll bring up this part. We got along personally. And that was a big, huge difference because that's what he really wanted. He really wanted somebody to be around to laugh with. And, he was, he was hilarious all day and all night. And even when he was mad, I would say things to him like, "Hey man, I'm sorry I wasn't paying attention to your record that you were making when I was 4." And then that would end, he would be so pissed off, and then that would make him laugh. And then all I do is laugh at him, because even when he was mad, he was killing me over here. Because he would have some insult that went along real funny. I just couldn't, so I'm telling, like, after his passing, I talked to Eric Singer, and I think it was Jimmy DeGrasso and Eric Singer and a couple other people. And I'm telling all these funny Ronnie Montrose stories, and they were at me like, "Who are you talking about?" And I'm like, "Talking about Ronnie Montrose, he was hilarious." And they, "Wow, this would not happen when we were in the band with him." And, I thought, wow, maybe I think I got him at a good time in his life where he just wanted to enjoy playing some songs and touring around and doing that stuff. So, man, what an experience that all was too.
How long did you do it?
So that was from 2010 to 2012 until he died in March of 2012, I believe. I'm terrible with years,
that sounds
but
about right.
I think it was somewhere around in that direction. Yeah. So a couple of years, and you know what? There was no pomp and circumstance. We toured around in a van and did fly dates, and there was no nonsense, and it was just like, and I even tell people that now, I was telling the Tesla guys, I drove the van up and down the East Coast and everything, and they're like, "You did?" Like, Ronnie just rode in a van. I'm like, "Yeah, he did."
Man.
And laughed the whole time. We had an amazing experience. It was really cool. Yeah.
What?
Yeah, it was the best. He was a good guy.
Do you remember the first time you hopped on stage with him?
Wow. Come to think of it, do I? I think it was. Yes, I do.
Okay.
It was actually. This has a Y&T connection because it was at the Mystic Theater in Petaluma, where Y&T just did 2 nights. They do that every year at the Mystic, and that was my first gig. And I remember Mike Borden from Faith No More and everyone. He was standing in the front, and there's a great picture of me playing in his head, watching me play, and I was like, "Oh, I have to have that framed." And I met him after, it was like the first guy I had met ever, playing with Ronnie, and he was so great, and that kicked it off, and that was so cool that he was there, and it seemed like it went by, and that was the beginning of everything, except Ronnie didn't like my drums that I was playing with at the time. They were made for the studio, and it was a 20-inch bass drum, and he looked at me and he goes, "You are not going to play it with me with that bass drum."
You know what's funny? Mike Vanderhill mentioned that to me. Actually,
I'm sure he did. He's had many experiences with him too, man. I bet he did.
Well, you think about those iconic songs. You talked about the iconic
Absolutely.
8 or the Great 8. His Rock Candy. You listen to the bass drum on that. That's very, it's Bonham, man. That there's no way you would have caught John Bonham playing a 20-inch bass drum. And it's it's interesting.
I was trying though.
Yeah, I'll bet. Well, it's strange when I look back at historic stuff with you. Way back Oleander days, and around that era. Your evolution was still happening. Like, your drumming was different. And you look so much different. Mm-hmm. You look so happy now. And I'm wondering, so we're going to talk about attitude change. I should just say really quick, folks, I'm going to interrupt myself for a moment because, number one, Thanksgiving and the holidays are really, really hard for a lot of people. I talked to some close friends about this quite a bit. There's a link that I'm going to post here with a phone number, and because the holidays are tough, I would like to make sure that people know that they can write this number down. The Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration hotline, 1-877-726-4727. If you're struggling out there and the holidays are hard, call that number. If you don't have anybody in your life that you really feel like you can lean on, this is important. Steve and I are talking about positivity and gratitude for the opportunities we have and how great it is to be able to smile and do what we do. But I know that this is a really hard time for a lot of people, and so I'm not trying to bring the timbre of the mood down. I want you to know.
I'll change it right now. If anyone else wants Kevin Rankin's personal number, you can call him 24 hours a day.
Yep. It's
okay.
Let me just look up Jason Jones' number real quick for you. Now,
actually, we should do that.
Yeah. He's on vacation right now. He'd love that. Right. Yes, he would love that. So write that crisis number down. And folks, this is important because I talked about looking back at those days, and I saw you, you're happy and you're like throwing the fist in the air when you're drumming, but there's a different spirit about your playing now. And I'm wondering about a change in your life, like where because one of those conversations you and I had was about getting lost in some of the craziness of rock and roll world. So you want to tell me a little bit about that? Yes,
rock and roll accoutrement.
Oui, as long as
I'm something that we definitely had a chance to share together, and it comes up in words and certain phrases, and I caught on to it right away with you, but yeah, I somewhere along the way, I didn't realize that some of the things that were happening in my life had to do with alcohol and with substance abuse and those types of things. And so it took me, and in the beginning it was okay, well, this is what, again, this is what my brother does, so it's got to be what I need to do or something, and when I was younger, and then you get to be an adult, and then it's not so funny anymore. Right. And then it becomes really a problem. And in a lot of ways, I'm very fortunate anyway, because I got to come to the other side of that. Now, the other part is I got to see things different, like we had talked about earlier, and that has to do with playing, and it has to do with when I first got sober, I was like, I'm not playing drums anymore. That's something that's in the past. It's only brought me pain. And that was it. And
that was your perspective.
That was my thought process, was this has been nothing but a problem in my relationships and everything. Now, the common denominator in all those relationships was, this. Hello. Okay. So, the thing is that, I realized along the way that was part of my journey, and it really became the biggest piece to my missing puzzle was a musical one. And the thing that was more surprising than anything in my life. And I realized that during playing, the reason why I was playing music and all these things unbeknownst to me was that I was always kind of being taken care of. And this was part of a bigger plan that I was not aware of at the time. And and that if I kept going at it, there was a reason why I kept going at it. I couldn't explain it to you then. I was 40 years old, and I'm playing I'm trying my best and failing miserably at the music thing at that point.
Okay.
But there was a reason why I kept doing it. And I would go, God, this is just not working out. And I just kept doing it anyway, and now I realize that was part of the plan. That was part of the path that I could, get by doing. And later on, it would mean something like it does now. There were so many things to come along the way that I hadn't realized that I was the common denominator in. And that I was doing these things to myself, but I didn't know how to fix them. I wanted you to fix them, or I wanted somebody else to fix them, but I wasn't going to fix them. But I had to learn how to do that, as we do.
Well, okay.
Right.
So you're, you're speaking sort of in a general sense.
Yes.
How was your life negatively impacted by like what you're putting in your system?
Well,
I mean, you mentioned musically
physically, I'm a two-time emergency room visitor,
too.
and one time, the last time was pretty much I showed up at the hospital dead. So, that was, and I'm also fortunate enough that alcohol was my problem, and I didn't have a bunch of different things going on at the same time.
Okay.
I
Okay.
did enough damage all on my own just by drinking.
Okay.
Which surprises some people. They usually think that if you're that far along, there's drugs or something involved, and it just wasn't. It wasn't my story. It wasn't
Yeah.
my case. So, I didn't know how to. I had not drank for periods of time. So when I played with Ronnie Montrose, I did not drink for 2 years, 2 months, 13 days. Who's counting? But I
Was that a
just
requirement
wasn't
for the gig?
drinking. Huh?
Was it
No, it was not. It
Okay.
was not. But prior to that, a few months earlier, I had been in the hospital for a week, and so I claimed, I'm not drinking anymore, and this is how I'm going to do this. But I didn't have the tools
Sure.
or anything else to make that a reality. I just said I'm never drinking again. And
Okay.
okay, that helps for a while when you're getting money, power, and prestige, which at that time that was a great gig to have. And I'm
Yeah.
playing with the great Ronnie Montrose. Things are going pretty good. And so I didn't realize that ego was a replacement part of the drinking,
Yeah.
but after he died, it didn't take me very long to spiral right back even worse than I was before, as people in that position, especially with alcoholics that drink like that,
Right.
usually do. So
Yeah.
I needed to find a way to put all the pieces together, which I did, and I still, it's a 12-step thing, and I still work that daily, even when I'm on the road or not. There's
Yeah.
always help out there. And as you and I had talked about Mexico, look, we're in Mexico. We're probably the only two sober people in this whole place of free booze and free everything, and we run smack dab into each other, right? And that's how that works.
We think that. I have funny stories about that because I think, when you're new in recovery, it's funny that you kind of think, oh, like my story is so unique, right? I'm the only one that's experienced this. And I think that's common for people. I did the very first 80s cruise, like 6 or 7 years ago. Right.
Right.
And I was a couple years sober by that point, and my ex-wife was working on some sobriety, and I thought, man, I'd like to have some help because you've got unlimited alcohol and whatever else they have on the boat, and it'd be nice to be able to have a little bit of recovery program, available to us. I asked the cruise director. I said, man, this is probably a stupid question. You don't happen to have anything like that on the boat? And they said, oh yeah, every day at 4:30 down in the library, the media library. And I was like, are you kidding me? And they said, yeah, no, all the cruises have them. It's an important part of this.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so each day that people were finding out about it, the meetings kept getting bigger.
Bigger
right?
and bigger.
And almost every band, there was one representative that would kind of show up and say, thank God there's something here. And the funniest thing, and I just got to share that, I was chairing one of those meetings, and it was like the fourth probably day of this cruise, and the meetings started to get pretty big, and they went around. Everybody shares what's going on with them, right? Struggles or celebrating, their wins. And this couple walks in, and this lady's pushing her husband in the wheelchair, and they're sitting next to me, and everybody shares their information, and it gets to them. And I said, did you guys have anything you wanted to share? And the guy goes like, I don't know what this is. You were talking about all this partying, and I'm on the deck upstairs, and there are women in bikinis playing Twister, and he said, this is craziness. And I said, well, yeah, this is a program of recovery. This is what this meeting's about. And so I thought, they obviously walked in and had no idea what was going on. So I'm talking to them after, and they said, how did you end up, because they were quite a bit older than me. And they said, so we are, instead of going to a retirement home as an older couple, we have an agent that books us on all these different cruises. And because of our age, they put us on an 80s cruise. And having no idea that it was not for people in their 80s, and
80s.
oh my God, these poor people watching crazy partiers. And I thought poor people. This dude was loving it. By the end, instead of going home early, this guy's
like,
this guy's just like camped out in his wheelchair, like watching the Twister games of bikinis.
I'm sure he was.
Oh my God.
He found out where the good entertainment was. Well, I also, on this last trip to Cancun, I also got to be around, just some of the crew guys and the other bands and everything. And I really realized, like, some of the guys I talked to, I'd go, you guys drink like 14-year-olds.
Right.
You're fine.
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It made me laugh. They're like, I had 3 beers last night. I'd be like,
yeah. Isn't that
I gotta be like before 6 a.m. on a Tuesday. Go on.
It's good that you can laugh about it, right? I mean, think about,
and that's part of it, man. I mean, we have to. I think that was one of the really fun parts was being able to enjoy people's stories, because some of the things that we do in the name of like a good time is hilarious, Sure. and I loved going, to see other people and be around some normal drinkers, and somebody be talking about, taking a whiz in a gas tank to try to get home after they've been hammered at a party, and I'm like, oh yeah, well, did you try this one? And they're like,
yeah.
So there's always those things, and that's it. If I've made it this far, if we've made it this far, there's a reason why that is. You have to continue it, and you have to be that, and I know that you are too, because everyone's told me you have to be the not example. I don't want to go that far, but
sure.
It's Kevin, what is this? It's I forgot. But it's attraction rather than promotion. Exactly. There it is, baby. Yeah. All right. But it's just it's interacting with people in a certain way and enjoying it, and we do that. We make sure we do that.
One concern that I remember having, and I think a lot of friends of mine that are really working on sort of making themselves better, regardless of what they're doing, is you think, if I'm not going to be drinking, if I'm not going to be using or whatever, my life is over. The fun is over, right? And what we look at, in this show, my show here on All Access Live, I've had some guests like Rudy Sarzo, right? When Sarzo was on, I was asking him, man, I mean, talk about loss, and some really tragic losses, some to do with alcohol and drugs, some just tragic events, I mean, Randy Rhoads was like, his brother died, in that plane crash, hitting the bus that he's on. And then he lost a brow and he lost Benali. And I said, man, how have you overcome adversity? Ronnie James Dio, right? How have you overcome that pain? And, I didn't expect him to just openly say, well, yeah, I found the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I said, whoa, okay, well, I know it's supposed to be anonymous. And I didn't mean to bring that up. And he said, yeah, no, he said, it saved my life. And he said, I lost the will to play. I really felt like, the light in, the fire that was lit in me was gone and extinguished. And then that program actually allowed him to be able to let go of a lot of that stuff. I mean, letting go is hard, dude.
Right.
But I will tell you, man, in this last year, the pandemic, if you think about all those things that are way out of our control, that was at the top of them, right? For 18 months.
Absolutely, yeah.
There's no gig happening for anybody in the world, right? Like every person on the planet was affected by the COVID thing, And if somebody is playing the God character enough that they think they can somehow control COVID,
right?
Good luck, bro. And so being able to recognize and let go of some of that,
right?
Whether you're working a recovery program or not, is really important, especially. Are you a parent? I was going to ask.
Yes. My son, he's 21. He goes to Cal Poly.
Nice.
And is a senior. So I got to see him last night. He's in town for Thanksgiving, and
Good.
As every 21-year-old is, he has a schedule to keep.
Right. But how many 21-year-olds do you know that are feeling like, man, the world is nuts right now, right? I mean, like
Yeah.
the things that you feel like, you looked forward to when you're 17, 18, and when you get to 21, and you think, oh, I'm an adult now. But yeah, whether you're an adult or not, there's a ton of stuff that we're unable to do because of, changes in the world. And
and look at, he's had to go to college. He's the only Brown so far that's gone and is going to finish college.
Okay.
And everyone goes, oh, does your son play an instrument too? And I'm like, no, what he does is go to college.
Yes.
So, but not only that, but look at the stuff. What he's had to overcome in the classes and stuff like that, like whether I think or not, it got a little easier, but but I mean, look at those things, like how do you overcome that kind of stuff? And he kind of went through it without even a blink of an eye, and seemingly, got adjusted, and and then carried on. And he had COVID before the vaccine.
Wow. Yeah.
I'm sure a college party or two might have had something to do with that, but
right.
Who knows?
Do you feel like your son watching dad's resiliency, work and recovery, and kind of turning your life around, helped him recognize, okay, I can weather this storm, because
right?
I've
seen... that's a great question. I mean, he was 12 or 13, probably 10, 10, 11, 12, 13, when things were really, 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 really bad.
Yeah.
So, that is a part of that. And certainly he had to go through an amazing amount of adversity as far as, having a dad that was responsible or around or awake. There was all those things. So I'm sure that comes into play, and the really good part is, look at, but your kids too, they've gotten to see some kind of, miracle happen, because
in a huge way.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's a big thing, and I know that he appreciates it and understands a lot of the goings on and stuff. And certainly just by seeing what's happened, all of the dramatic positives that have happened in my life since that day, like that's an example of some sort to him. So, I mean, that's a fantastic thing.
And, I talk about legacy a lot on the show, and our dear friend Tawny Catane, I had Tawny on the show, and we talked about, I had her on the show 3 weeks before she passed, and I asked her, and I have asked most people this question, about legacy. Like, if you're looking back over your life, what is it that you want people to remember you for? And I'll ask you.
The easiest thing would be this. So, because I don't have, for right or wrong, I don't have that big driven thing of like, I need to make my mark here or there or whatever it is, because, musically or what you and I do, I think that there's a level, of course, we want the best things to happen. Sure. And of course they are happening all the time, whether we think they are or not, but those parts of my life are quite simple. I'm very grateful to be in that position, and I love what I get to do. I mean, that's amazing. But I think the legacy really comes with, like our kids and stuff, and hopefully our kids, you have two boys too, right?
I do. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think one of them's about the same age, 21, right?
20 and 22. Yep. We're right.
20 and 22. That's right.
We got the span, you and I do.
That's right. And, but I think if they learned something from our mistakes, I mean, isn't that what life is about? I guess you learn some positives from your parents. I mean, my brother and I laugh all the time because, and we have a middle brother too that's more like our mom. So he's the polar opposite of us two, are just like constantly, and he's very quiet and reserved, and he's more like our mom. But we laugh now because the thing when you're growing up is you don't want to become your dad.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Both of us are morphing into our dad at light speed every day.
Can't even help it, man. It's part of your DNA.
Yeah, and my wife will just look at my dad, and I'll look over at her and I go, "See what you got to look forward to?
Oh,
this is it right here." Yeah,
man. Of course, you love your dad. I love my pop too. There are things that, it's interesting. Like I've got this sign behind here. Every cloud has a silver lining. My dad, just by his nature, right, he's just thinks, whatever, the world is going to be a screwed up place, or it's hard for him to see the silver lining a lot of days, and he's been dry for 52 years, but just dry. And it's hard for him. The perspective is a huge thing, right? Being able to take a perspective. And you talked about the grind, about being on the road. Dude, okay, first of all, anybody that bitches about having to be out in a van or whatever, and they're out getting paid to go play music for people, they're an idiot if they're complaining. Right. So I'm just saying, guys, my friends that are out there, if I hear you bitching about it, or if I bitch about it, slap me, because we are so blessed to get to do what we do, right?
Yeah.
You talked about this, your smile being the thing that carries, your sort of the memories away. People take that as a memory about Steve Brown.
Right.
From me, man, there was this amazing quote. There was a speech that Jim Carrey gave many years ago to this commencement speech.
You and I talked about this, right?
Yeah, the commencement speech that he talked to marketing students, right? So their idea about marketing is materialistic, right? They're out to make some money. And he said, man, the effect you have on others is the greatest form of currency there is. And to me, he nailed it, man. And it's worth more to me than all the money in the world or the cars or whatever. And those people, the people that affect me that way,
right?
They've changed me for the better. I want to be able to bring that too, and so without a doubt, and there's my desire for legacy. And if I forget about it, I always ask my friends to remind me,
but I don't know about you though. I mean, I certainly spent most of my life, kind of, yes, still kind of spreading that message, but not realizing what I was doing. But most of the time, I would just like your dad, though. I would see the negative and everything, and yes, I still do. And God, I love to bitch about like not having granola or something. I love to bitch about those things.
Jason Jones getting your inheritance for drums.
Yes, no, he's busy making Hawaiian pork right now. But but the thing is that like I still get into that mode, but at the same time I love to laugh at myself because I realize what just came out of my mouth, and I'm like, I'm on bonus time here, I shouldn't, for all other reasons, be here, but we know that through the things that we've been taught, but through the things that we had to learn, through the things that we had to put in our daily lives and everything, that it's part of our path is, we're here as long as we get to be here, and that ain't our business either. So the smile comes from like waking up in the morning and going, awesome. And, look at all the blessings and stuff that we've got in our life. I mean, I wouldn't have an amazing wife, or I wouldn't have all these other things happen at all if, this wasn't happening.
You know what, man? I mean, like, if you think about it,
that's right.
Yeah, lingerie. Steve's got this beautiful like partner in crime, and I got to just chat with her for a second off before we got started today, and I should have told her that you spoke with such reverence about her when we were hanging out on the tour, down in Cancun.
I'm going to make sure she watches this later.
Yeah, man. You know what, man? Yes, that's a good one. There were some comments that I saw from that people made here on like Facebook and some of the other spots that didn't get caught up in our little chat here. Looks like my buddy Scott Valentine. He's there. Great dude. He's curious if you and Wild Mick Brown did you actually
Yes.
drum off to see who was better?
Well, there was a time where when Vinny Appice and Carmine did their brother drum thing.
Drum Wars,
I thought that was so brilliant, and I called Mick up and I said, "Hey, man, we got to do this. This would be so much fun." And he'd go, "Steve, who in the hell would ever want to see you and I do this?" And I'm like, "Okay, point well taken." But it was a great drunken idea at the time.
Sure.
He just didn't have the right amount of alcohol in him at the same time that I did. But to answer that question, no. He didn't really see me play drums until I was about 25, and I had already been playing about 10 years. Yeah, because by the time I was 6 or so, he and George Lynch had already moved to LA, and I didn't start playing drums until I was 14 or 15, and so he did come home. My only experience with this is he did come home to my parents. He looked at my drums and realized that I had been playing drums left-handed for 6 months, and that's how I learned, because it was comfortable to me. Yeah, and I heard Ringo was like that too, but I still do some things left-handed, odd, odd, shocking. But he was like, "What the hell is this, Steve?" And he reconfigured it. So I re-taught myself how to play right-handed because he said so.
Okay.
And but there was a period of time where I could do both. And it was kind of fun to do one set right-handed and one set left-handed, just to mess with the 3 people that would have maybe noticed if they weren't drunk already.
Right. But, just the drummers, right?
I've been. But we never really played together at the same time. Now, like in '95, Dawkins had reunited, and my band got to open for them in Sacramento.
Right.
And so that was really the only time where it was like, wow, this is actually happening. And there was maybe one other time, but really we never sat behind drums, and did that. Neither one of us have drums at home. In any place that we've lived or anything, he didn't have this house with like a drum room in it or anything like that. It was like, no, that's a separate thing. And I think you and I talked about this, like Buddy Rich was like that too.
Right.
Like Johnny Carson used to say, "Man, I went over to Buddy's house and there was no drums in his house." And he's like, "No, that's where I work." So, and it's always kind of been the same thing for me. And I like to, if I had drums in my house, I would probably still never play them because they would always be there. And I'd be like, I'll get to them later.
Everywhere. Like this right here. Yes. You can see behind me. This drum set is a 1956 Gretsch Silver Sparkle, owned by my uncle. My uncle Jim Ferrolo played this. Ooh. This was his teenage kit when he was playing.
Awesome.
He was a jazz drummer in Chicago. He sent this to me 2 Christmases ago because he moved into a smaller place and no longer playing. He hit 80 and it was time to, and I'm so grateful to have it. And my son just came back home, brought his massive Neil Peart replica kit. There's no room. So I've got I've got Glenn Sobel's old kit right here. The last Mapex kit that he had before he switched over to DW from the Alice Cooper tour. Right. So it's a black satin spider eye finish with red hardware and spider webs for the bass drum lugs. It's pretty wicked.
That's awesome.
I call it Charlotte. Of course, Charlotte's Web, and then I got my beautiful Spawn kit here, broken glass with red rally stripes. So that's Libby.
Yeah, see, I love the broken glass finish. I don't care who makes it. If it's broken glass, I'm all over it. I love it.
Yeah, you can't go wrong with it.
Yeah, no.
So tell me. Yeah, I don't. I was going to ask you about drums. Like people. All right, guys, if you don't want to hear about drums, you can tune out for a second, but don't go anywhere.
Yeah.
But have you been a Tama guy forever?
No, I have not actually. Okay. Well, my brother, because of Mick, I mean, that was his endorsement in the 80s, was the Tama thing. He was one of the first guys that had the power tower cage thing, and by the way, I ended up with that. It took 3 people and a U-Haul truck just to go to the gig down the street, which I guilty.
Yeah.
And I did that once. Yeah, that was enough, and never again. But he had been a Tama guy for a really long time. He I think he just, I don't really know what happened with that, why he didn't continue that later. I think because in the 90s, like, no one was really doing anything and everyone was kind of doing a turnover, and he lost his endorsement or something. But so yes, I have been a Tama guy in the past, kind of by proxy, and I loved the stuff that they make. And it's kind of funny now. Troy's been with Tama for like 37 years or something crazy, and which is awesome. And so now I, kind of ended up back in that realm. But the kit that, the last couple of kits I've had have been DWs, and the Ronnie Montrose kit that I had, that I still have, it's been my workhorse ever since.
Not the 20 inch.
No, not the one that replaced that.
Gotcha.
And DW had come out with the Performance series, which was really cheap. And I go, look, it doesn't matter as long as I can get this 24-inch bass drum and all the drum sizes that I wanted. And they were more than happy to do that. And I've had it ever since. And every front of house guy I've ever worked with or anything, where'd you get those drums, dude? And I'd be like, I paid $1,800 for them, or $1,200 or whatever it was. It was so silly. I paid $8,000 for the kit that Ronnie Montrose hated. And, but the one that I've used ever since then and still use, it's still at the Oleander studio. But I don't know, in the future, we're going to see what happens. I would love to go kind of back to Tama and kind of continue on that legacy, kind of where my brother left off, and put Troy in the mix too somehow. But hey, it's not today and it's not up to me.
Boy, man, you've learned a lot of good lessons.
Haven't I?
I realized in the chat here, Subdweller has been talking, and I didn't realize there's Jason Jones right there. He said, "Guys, I got to hit the pool again. See you both soon."
Right.
Yeah,
all
Jason, right. You go off, and now we can talk about you again. So go ahead and have a good time. Say hi to Angie for me.
Yeah. Give Angie a hug and go eat some food and lay by the pool. And Kevin and I will continue talking some smack about you. Thanks, Jason.
God,
right.
But,
Jason had to pipe in.
Yeah. Is Audrey in the background saying?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, she's giggling.
I think at his expense, we're really, we've gotten some good mileage out of this. I was gonna say the Oleander thing, right? That was like the first like major commercial thing that you had done. Is that right?
Yeah, pretty much. That kind of kicked things off. The guys we all came from Sacramento, and we were all in different bands. And actually, Dan McNeil, I talked about earlier, hung out with those guys a lot more. They all had like a softball team and stuff with all these musicians in town. And I was more into like sitting there watching them drinking beer. But but anyway, they kind of became friends over the years. And after their first record came out and everything kind of blew up, they would always, call me and they go, "Hey, can you help us? We wanted to record some songs, and, our drummer couldn't make it," or whatever it was. And then, it became, "Hey, we have a TV show that we're going to film in a couple of days live. Can you learn our whole first record and a couple of these covers, and we'll see you at the airport?"
Wow.
So that kind of continued on. And then probably about that time, they were working on their second record, and they got Scott Devours, who he plays with he went on to join a band called I'm a Robot, and then he went on to various other things that I'm missing, because he's like a studio awesome guy too. But he turned out to be Roger Daltrey's drummer from The Who. And he even covered some Who gigs like at the last minute. So how awesome is that?
Totally.
I kept thinking all these years, like, man, that's gotta rub off on me at some point, right?
Right. There's by proxy. Yeah.
As I was sitting here talking about my brother's path, now I'm linked on to Scott Devour's path too, going, son of a bitch, when does this thing kick in?
Take what you can get, man. Absolutely.
Right. But so then, I kind of stuck around with those guys. I had a rehearsal room, studio and stuff that they did all their pre-production in, and in whatever band I was in, kind of shared that room with them too. And then that band would come and go, and then I would just end up being with them. So over the years, we just kept kind of doing fly-in shows. And then in 2013, we had the record Something Beautiful. Yeah. And then we toured with Bush and Three Doors Down, Chris Daughtry, and played a bunch of huge festivals like Rock on the Range and Buzz Fest in Texas and a bunch of other stuff, and got to see some really great stuff. Now, a funny story, a side story, Kevin. I know. Here we go with the side stories. Recently, I think at the beginning of this run, we were Tesla was playing in Boston at the Xfinity Center, which we used to be known as like something Woods. I can't remember, but I got out of the bus in the morning and I looked around and I was just, I know I had been there before. And I was like, God, I've been here before. And I was thinking, there's no way I could be here before. And I went around to the front of the house and I looked around and I was like, I know I've been here before. And now, like what they call sheds, they're 10,000 seat things with a cover over the top of it, and they all look exactly. DTE looks exactly like the Xfinity Center. Right. It's the same thing. But for some reason, man, this one really got me. And I was looking around backstage. I thought, God, I'd been here before. So then I was talking to this Tom Flowers, the singer for Oleander, or somebody, and somebody said, yes, dummy, you have been there before. And it was with Three Doors Down, Chris Daughtry, and Hailstorm. Oh. And they put us in this dressing room. It was 1 billion degrees that day. And they put us in this dressing room that wasn't even in the same venue. It was like over this hill. And it was hot that day. And I remember after the show, I went to the dressing room and I came out. By the way, I was not in good shape. I wasn't in fighting condition. And I walked out of the dressing room and I looked around and I thought, oh God, I'm passing out. And I sat down and I just kept rubbing my eyes and looking around, and I just kept seeing like stars, and I was going to pass out and everything. And so somebody walked out, looked at me and said, hey, what's the matter, man? And I go, oh, I'm passing out. I'm seeing stars and everything. And they looked out and looked at me and went, it's fireflies, you idiot. Oh. To be honest, I had never seen fireflies, but it was so great when I said, hey, Tom, I think I've been here before. And he was just like, fireflies.
Oh my God.
I loved it because that happened like 3 different times this run, where I had been to these venues before and had barely a recollection of, if you ask me about how the show went, I would tell you it was fine. Where it was, I forget about it. But
it's funny you mentioned like those recollections, I've talked to a couple of guys about this. In fact, I have not yet broadcast, but the day that you and I met, I did an all access live recording with Corey Glover from Living Color, right?
Yeah, and you and I talked about that.
That's right. One of the conversations I had with him, and it's interesting, you might be like me, that the things I remember more about those kind of venues is not necessarily the seating arrangement or the stage or anything like that. It's what they provide for catering backstage, because if I get another deli tray, I'm just going to freak out. But when they have like home cooked meals, Fiddler's Green in Denver, I asked Corey about it. He goes, dude, I know that family, the family that comes in, they bring the tamales. And I go, that's the one. And he said, yeah. He said, every band that goes through Fiddlers, they're like, that. Isn't it crazy that that's what we like and then you're like, oh, we're going back to Fiddlers.
I'm going to tell you, I will remember the catering in Tupelo, Mississippi, a couple of nights ago forever.
Really?
Because it was legit. In the morning, there's like, they had made biscuits and gravy, but with real biscuits and homemade gravy with the sausage in it and the whole thing. Yeah. And I'm trying not to like over carb the whole thing, but I wiped out all that stuff and the dessert. They made these amazing desserts, but they were like this hippie group of people that were like into some, So of course they were gonna make great food,
right? Like just snacks and like munchies everywhere.
Everything was cooked with real butter and oil, and
you said Mississippi.
The potatoes were crispy. Tupelo, Mississippi.
Yeah.
And man, it was like, what a day. And then the fortunate part was the next day I kind of slept on the plane all the way home because I was so carved out. I was like,
you're fat and happy, man. Like actually, so I fly tomorrow. Tomorrow I play Virginia, right? So I'm taking a red eye and I'm like, okay, I'm just going to get all the tryptophan in me and then I can do my red eye flight so I can go to Richmond and I can sleep all the way on the plane.
Right. So are you actually playing tomorrow or Friday?
I play Friday, so I get in at
Okay, so you're flying tomorrow. Yeah.
yeah.
All
I
right.
figured I didn't want to try and fly on Thanksgiving. I can have some Thanksgiving dinner with my family and my girlfriend's coming over. I started
Yeah.
dating. Yeah. So we'll see.
That's another interview where I interview you, and then we can talk about that.
Yeah, that sounds good,
Yeah.
man.
Mister.
We're definitely going to be doing parts 2, 3, 4, and all that.
Oh yeah, because
Like,
we have so many different topics. So, but speaking of Thanksgiving, my wife and I were saying, what did we do last Thanksgiving? And we left on Thanksgiving Day and went to Aspen,
oh,
and
nice.
that was, and quite frankly, I think that was a pretty good time to go because there was no one in the airport actually
Yeah.
at all, and no one in the airplane really either.
Oh,
It was
yeah.
it
Totally.
was unmistakably fruit cold when we got there.
Oh, yeah.
I don't
Do you
think I
ski?
had quite prepared myself for that. I used to when I was younger because we
Yeah.
lived right near Lake Tahoe, so
Oh, nice.
we skied and stuff all the time. But God, to be honest, I don't think I have in probably 20 something years. Now.
Really?
Yeah,
You,
but she's an avid. She likes some snowboarding, so I think she
okay.
try to talk me into that.
Why don't you guys come up here and we'll go hit Mount Hood. We'll do some skiing and snowboarding together.
Okay.
I grew up in Montana, man, and I grew up next to the ski resort, and
keyword Kevin is Ken Rich.
Oh my goodness. How did I even forget about this connection? Yes.
I know.
Man.
Well, well, see, I think you and I need to make a map. Okay, we'll do one whole show, and it'll just be you with a map and me with a map, and we'll go through all the people that we know together.
Totally.
And that would be an interesting thing because, man, you can't. And here we are in Cancun. We're like at the. I couldn't believe how far away, and you knew some people that were so obscure. I mean, it wasn't like, "Hey, do you know the drummer for blah blah blah?" It was like, oh, "Hey, there's a shoe salesman in this little town that you live near," and I'm like, "Are you kidding me?"
Yeah, man. But there are no coincidences, you know.
No, absolutely not. Yeah,
I really believe that. And you and I talked about, I think, weren't you and I talking about luck too? It was like right after I met you, we went on to play Palm Springs. We did the Pride Festival, actually,
which you were supposed to be. You were supposed to be the grand poobah.
Yeah. I was ready. I was ready to lead the parade. Yeah, the parade marshal, the grand marshal. Yeah, I was all set, man. Our singer said he had me lined up, and
I saw your outfit.
Yeah, I was ready to go, but alas, somebody else they beat me to it. It was an incredible gig. It was so awesome.
It looks like it was a lot of fun.
But
yes,
the drummer in the opening act I just had on my show the other day, Stacy Lamont Sidnor, who plays with the Jacksons and plays with Diddy, and the dude is so incredible. And like the hang with you, he and I just hit it off right away. And of course, know all these people, obscure people. Some guy walks back into my dressing room or tent there in Palm Springs, and he said, "Are you from Portland?" I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "Do you know Chris Ruby?" And I'm like, "Wait, what? How the heck?" And he's like, "This dude had just done a record with a great friend of mine up in Portland." I guess that's a little closer connection in music, but I think what I said to Stacy, and I thought maybe you and I talked about luck, because somebody had said that they were lucky. I used to say that a lot, that I was the luckiest man on the planet. I think so much of what we've encountered in our life is fortune. We're fortunate. A lot of luck is what we've made of it, right? I mean, like the Tesla gig, to be in this point right now where, you're not lucky that you got that gig. It's a beautiful blessing. It's a fortunate thing that you're doing it. It's not like you just woke up one day and bought a lottery ticket and, oh, hey, Tesla called me and I'm playing drums in the gig.
Yeah, exactly.
If you weren't prepared, that wouldn't happen. And
and look at how many years that has been in the making. I've been around those guys and done so much stuff with them over the last 15 or so years. But here's what I do know also to add on to that is that had those things happen, had this happened to me then, I would have blown it.
Yeah.
And I know now And of course, hindsight says 2020. But when I put the pieces together leading up to now, I always look at the fact that I was not prepared like I thought I was, and I wouldn't have been able to handle those things, to handle the things that have come at me in the prior months and everything, and been able to throw a bunch of balls up in the air and juggle them all at the same time and be gracious about it.
Yeah.
I probably would have been out for 2 weeks and fallen down on stage a few times and had some laughs, and that would be the end of that.
Ah, man. Yeah, you know what?
And ruined my friendships or my relationships that I've had with those guys from that point on, and I've had that a few times.
Yeah. Really lost some relationships from bad choices you made, or
no, but passed up on things out of fear at that point. Passed on bands that I could have played with, or I had options to go try out for or play with or something like that, and I passed on them at the time for whatever I made up in my head, but that I did now.
Sure.
Because I still have relationships with those people, and they are way more important than me playing in a band with them.
Yeah.
So that's a great thing. Part of the thing that we didn't get a chance to talk about, but it was John Nymann yesterday, and I was a 17-year-old kid, and I'm playing with him, and he had talked about Mark Ross, and I love the fact that he plays Mark Ross's guitar, and that guitar meant something to me, and I'm not even a guitar player. And I remember the first time he pulled, Steve, let me show you this thing, because he knew it would mean something to me. And oh my, the first time I saw John play that thing on stage, I cried through there. I mean, like I cried like a newborn for the whole Y&T show. Everyone's like, "What's the matter with you?" And I'm like, "Oh, John with the," just horrible. But that experience with them, then I'm sure John to Mark was like, "Hey, we can't have a 17-year-old can," and as bummer it was, but that started my journey with Mark, who really kind of taught me everything via playing this unorthodox situation with Earl Doda in these weird venues. But that taught me how to travel to gigs, how to load in and out every night at 4:00 in the morning, and how far you were actually going to drive for that money.
Right. Yeah.
Because I was going to high school when I started with her, and it was 100 or so miles away from, home every show that I had to do with, like 3 nights a week. And I'd be like, "Lady, I got to go to high school tomorrow."
You and I had the same life, buddy. I was doing that same thing, playing all the ski resorts multiple nights a week and driving up back and forth. And
yes,
man,
absolutely. And I have no idea how my parents still let me do that, but I think my brother kind of just broke them in with all of the stuff that was going to happen. And by the time I came around, they were older and they were wiser. And I don't know whether that's another way to say they kind of didn't give a shit at that point. They were like, "Just go and don't bother us with it."
He proved that following your dreams is something that's actually achievable, and that's a real fortunate thing for you to have had him paved that way, so that your parents aren't going to be like, "Oh, that's a silly pipe dream. You can't do that." Like we're lucky, I guess, fortunate to have parents that that believe in us in that way.
I don't know what we would have done without without the support of our parents. Are just and people in the industry, they don't ask about Mick or I half the time. If they've met my parents, they go, "How are your parents?" I mean, having these experiences and watching my parents with like Steven Tyler and all the Aerosmith guys, and when Dokken was touring with them and stuff, and then having them, a couple weeks later, having them be like, "Oh, hey, Steven, how you doing? Oh, great. Where's your parents?"
Oh my God, I love that.
And they're still the same way. It's just like the things that excite me. And now I have YouTube, and I can go, "Hey, you can watch the show that I just did 5 minutes ago in Huntsville, Alabama."
That's why I stream my stuff on Facebook oftentimes, is so that my mom and dad back in Montana can say, "Oh, that's what our kid's doing right now." Yeah.
Right.
You know, it's funny that you mentioned that. My pop and I ran into Duff McKagan at a Seattle Seahawks game several years ago. Duff and his band Loaded were shooting a music video right outside the game. And I walked up. We had another good friend of mine who's, wicked drummer here in town, who was his basically roadie while he was out touring. Ryan Moore, amazing drummer. And I went up and talked to Duff about it. And my dad was standing there with me. My dad had no idea. I mean, he'd heard of Guns N' Roses, of course, but he didn't know Duff. Right. Duff's like 6'8", towering over him. And we talked for a little bit. And he goes, "So who's this guy?" And I go, "This is my dad. He's a sax player." And he's like, "All right." And he just starts talking to my dad about sax and about jazz. And
bingo.
All of a sudden, my conversation's gone. He's just like, there are 60,000 people around us going into this stadium, right, to go and watch the Seahawks game. But Duff is like, "Really? So you played like in a Dixieland band? That's cool." And I'm like, "Oh my God, Dad, if you had any idea, that's freaking Duff McKagan." But he could care less. My dad was just like, "What a nice guy."
I'm like 16 years old, and I'm listening to my dad tell Steven Tyler or somebody like, what direction the wind blows in Lincoln County at 3:30 in the afternoon, and I'm just like, "Oh shit, this is like gotta be the worst thing ever." And to see them go, and I'm sure Duff did the same thing to your dad. He'd be like, "Yeah, wow, you're kidding."
But you know what? They might appreciate the fact that there's just authenticity there, right?
Yes, and it's normal conversation. It does not have to do with catering the bus or what you do for a living or something,
right?
Or whatever. It's like any of those things are off. It's just like normal human beings.
The conversation they have with their own parents. That was what it was like. This is funny. Yeah. The hang that you and I have. On the Facebook side of things, I'm looking at some of these chats, and Scott Valentine, a great friend of mine, is a big fan of yours. He's been chatting quite a bit about things in little comments here. But he said, "I want to see Steve and Kevin getting a drum off." That was seconded by Denise Sala. And I will say, if I'm speaking for myself here, and I can't speak for Steve, the last thing I'm ever interested in is having a drum off. I'm not a drum solo guy. I could care less about
you, Kevin.
Here's what we would do. If you and I think this is Dean Castronova and I have been there doing this. Like, I'm not going to go up against Dean and go, "Oh, let me show you this." Or Glenn Sobel. Sobel and I are dear friends. And
of that. Yes.
Let's lay down some funk. Let's just play some pocket, and you show me what you want to do. If you want to chop out, great. But for me, I want to play what feels good. And drum solos, they don't feel. I mean, I don't want to count.
I panicked this last run. Frank Ann and I were talking, and Frank lists those types of things too. He's like, "Dude, you should do a drum solo," and I'm like, No, that's not gonna happen, right?
Right.
And then, but we did compromise where we there's a little like drum break in between songs, so I'm happy with it, and he's happy with it, and it's also kind of humorous in a way, which suits me well.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I mean, I've had drummer friends that just they just want to play like that all the time, and I'll go, "Great, you know what? I'll get together with them, and I'll sit there and just lay down a group for an hour and watch this thing happen over here." And there was another point in there, and I forgot what it was. But yeah, the thing that interests me the less is like, I love. And I think you and I talked about this. I love watching the YouTube videos, and I love seeing all the Instagram drummers and all the crap. It's amazing.
Sure.
Amazing. I can't do it. I'm not interested in doing it because that's not how I keep a job that I have.
Yeah.
Okay.
You got the skills to pay the bills.
Yes, it's not. It's playing. Look, my Instagram thing. Brown counts to 4. That's what I do.
Nice.
I count to 4 and I start over, right? And maybe in between there's going to be some cymbal splashes and a couple of tom hits, maybe, if I'm lucky on that day. But sometimes I just leave it out, There's a couple of short bars in Edison's Medicine. I've watched it on that I never think
Yeah.
And when we got to New York City, the drum riser, Troy's drum, his rack system wouldn't fit in Irving Plaza, and so I had to like reconfigure it quick. And,
Yeah.
and which meant like the toms got used for like my Gatorade holder or
Oh,
something,
nice.
like
Yeah.
and it was like, well, how's that going to happen? And I thought, well, you're not going to notice it. It's everything that's going to need to be there is going to need to be there. Yes.
Yeah.
Were there not any fantastic drum fills? Well, there's really not any fantastic drum fills anyway out of this.
Buddy.
But but it came off without a big hitch, and it's like that's part of it. You have to be adaptable. Sure. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, this
that's
too.
That's important. Yep.
Kevin, all the bands that you played with and all genres and everything, I mean, at some point in your life, you probably didn't wake up playing some metal bands and trying not to smile, going, hey, it's okay, 'cause someday I'm going to play with a flock of seagulls.
Right.
Yep.
Didn't happen.
Because you're like, right.
Yeah.
And then in that process of maybe this happened with you too. I mean, it definitely happened with me. It was like I had to get over myself. Like, sure. I had to start from scratch and really, start playing. The $5 gig is just as important as the $5,000 gig, right, or whatever it is, and I had to start from the bottom and realize that was a way to grow, to start growing again musically.
Absolutely. So, yeah. The fulfillment thing is really interesting. What fulfills us as drummers and musicians now, I mean, for me, right, being able to contribute to the greater portion of the band, the whole greater than the sum of its parts kind of conversation. Yes. I love finishing a night going, okay, man, we're all firing on all cylinders. I gave everything that I could, and it didn't mean me, playing Moby Dick, or
right.
Just, I mean, like, it's like watching a sports team, right? If a team of, there may be some all-star players in the soccer team, but you have to work as a unit, in order to be able to score the goal.
Yeah, that guy's not going to get it done all by himself.
No. Yeah, Michael Jordan.
Yeah.
Jordan couldn't win all those championships by himself.
And even getting back to like playing Instagram and playing drums like that, that was one of the when I was teaching at this little music school for a while, and I didn't, when COVID hit, I didn't want to do it online. I liked the one-on-one interaction, and that was the way I wanted to do it. But one of the things is like I wanted to teach beginners and intermediate, because for a bit there, I think, I just started getting all these students that they weren't students, first of all. They wanted to just come in and see if they could, kick my ass, or whatever. Right. And it kind of got to be a colossal waste of time after 5 or 6 times of this happening. And then some guy, leaving angry. And I'm like, well, that's not what I'm teaching. So I thought I would want to specify and be really specific about what I'm doing. I wanted to teach people how it started for me, because I love to see that spark, I know you're getting it now. And sometimes it happens right away, and sometimes it takes like a year. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh my God, look what happened. Totally. But I mean, it certainly isn't for lack of, I'm sure that you sat in a bedroom somewhere and played Rush songs forever. And I know I probably took a 6 months off of my life learning half of Hemispheres,
right?
And somebody said like, oh, hey, any Rush songs? I'm like, yeah, I know like half of Hemispheres, but can we play Back in Black instead? Right. I don't know. Yeah. I used to know that.
Hard to watch people dancing to La Via Strangiato, and so
and I'll tell you, I tried to play it recently, and boy, did I lose it.
Yeah. I was like, it's the ghost strokes, that left-handed part, man, the left-hand snare part.
Yeah. All of it in general. I just don't even think that way anymore. Totally. Like when you're 17 or 16 or whatever, I was like, oh yeah, I'm all into it. But it was fantastic. That I thought that one thing, those records were attainable. They were reachable enough where it's simple to play like the master, but it was still attainable where you could still kind of learn some new things along the way, you know, and that was what was interesting about this. I love it.
Man, there's so much of that kind of stuff that we're gonna have to do in a part 2 because
I know. I look at how
like it does.
Right, John Nymann already asleep.
I know.
Hi, John.
Wait, our audio might have almost caught up by that point, actually. So let's do this. I'm going to tell people if you
I don't know. Shit, almost a whole hour, and it was like, hold on.
That was so hard. Wait. Yeah, I know. Thank goodness, but like he was such a sport.
I loved it because you know what? He is such a perfect guy for that, though.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, because he's always so gracious anyway, and
he is.
And then you know, it was just so great. But I thought, well, is the video locked at first, or what was going on? And I thought you picked it up quite well.
Thanks, man. Yeah, you know,
right.
Technology. You got to be able to, you know, work with the adversity, right? So,
and if you would have known the things that Andrea and I had to go through to get this happening right here,
well, thank you.
I don't know how. I don't know how we made it this far.
I love it, man. Well, please tell her thank you for sharing this time with us, and you guys that are out there that have been chiming in and chatting and watching. I so appreciate it. If you came in late and you didn't catch that link below, please go to youtube.com/allaccesslive with Kevin Rankin. Hit that link, subscribe, hit the bell, be notified when the new shows come up. I've got some good ones. I mentioned earlier, Heather Thomas from back in the day. She's coming on. I've got Dave Ellefson from Megadeth and the new band, The Lucid. I've got Vinny Appice coming in.
You get all the stars, man.
I'm so grateful, dude. I just love people. Talking about thankful, this is the gratitude season, man. I'm so thankful. So everybody out there, have a beautiful Thanksgiving. Angelique, thank you so much for sharing Mr. Steve Brown. And Steve, have a wonderful, wonderful Thanksgiving, buddy.
You too, brother. I love you, man.
I love you too.
I hope all the travels and all the shows and everything go good. And then, you know, we'll have to schedule a part 2.
Yeah, part 2, part 3. Yeah. You know what?
The next time I'll schedule it a little better, so I'll be on a bus somewhere, and it'll be even more fun, or in a hotel lobby somewhere, you know, like in Podunk, Idaho, or you know, Bozeman, Montana, somewhere like that.
There we go.
And I could get Ken Rich in there, and then we could have a big surprise party. All right.
I want that, and I'll be chiming in from the barbecue pit at Jason Jones' house. Thanks again, Jason Jones, for introducing us.
All right, man.
Next time,
Jason,
buddy.
See what you did? What you did here?
This is a bro crush. Yes. Actually, when you come on next time, you better bring Frank Hannon, man, because I threw all sorts of hooks in the water trying to get Frank on. So I think he'd be a fun hang. So
absolutely.
Yeah, and I want to know what he has.
I don't know whether I can talk him into anything except for, you know.
just say, God,
I don't know, but
you could just say, dude, this flock of seagulls guy keeps talking shit about you, and I think you ought to come on and defend yourself. So, yeah, no.
I don't know if that's the right approach either.
No, maybe not. He just seems like such a wicked dude, man. I love his playing.
Yeah, man. He'd be a great interview, too. He's always great.
I think so.
Interviews and stuff. Yes.
So,
and he'll probably be a little bit more focused than you and I. So, all right. Happy Thanksgiving. I love you, brother. And this is kind of, you know what this is right now? This is kind of like what it's like standing outside an elevator in Cancun, Mexico, with people coming up and down.
That's
and you
true.
and I going, listen, I got to hang up. No, I'll say I love you and you hang up. No, you say I love you and I'll hang up together. No, hey, you know what? Come over to my... All right.
This is the shortest conversation we've ever had. Okay, man. Have a great week.
This is actually. All right, man. You too.
Thank you, my friend. You guys take care and subscribe.